Hello, and welcome to another episode of Finding Mr. Hyde, the podcast. I'm your host, Allie Jackson, and I am bringing you my positive and practical approach to dating, relationships, and a whole lot else about life from my lived experience. Thank you for being here. Thank you for almost 5 years of the pod. Actually, by the time you're listening to this, it will be nearly 5 years to the day. February 18th is our technical 5-year anniversary. Thank you. And I want to celebrate you. I want to give appreciation for the listeners that have built the last 5 years. If you are going to be anywhere near New York City on Saturday, February 28th, if you haven't heard already, I'm throwing a listener appreciation party, an anniversary party. It's going to be at the Folly NYC. Doors open at 7 o'clock for patrons and 8 o'clock for public pod listeners. And I'm going to have a sponsored bar tab that's first come, first serve. So patrons will get first dibs, some welcome gifts for people that show up early. It's going to be a lot of fun. Entry is free, by the way. All you need to do is RSVP at tinyurl.com/FMH5years, the number 5. That's how you'll get access to the bar tab. So you RSVP for free, and I will have wristbands to access that sponsored bar tab with that free RSVP. So I really hope to see you there. It's going to be super, super fun. This week, we have an awesome interview with Dr. Paula Freedman-Diamond. She is the author of a book, Toxic Striving, and she's also a licensed therapist. She talks a lot about people-pleasing, which is the original topic that we came onto the interview to discuss, but we end up talking about a lot of other stuff too. It's a really juicy interview. We talk a lot about how people-pleasing really comes down to control, and that for especially ambitious, successful women, it can seem counterintuitive that really ambitious, successful women might also be people pleasers. But both of those things encompass a lot of control. There's control involved in being a people pleaser because the thought is that, well, if I can please everyone all the time, then I can totally control the situation and no one will ever be mad at me. And that is really just a way to avoid uncomfortable feelings in the same way that maybe avoidance would be, in the same way that swinging the pendulum to the other side and being too dogmatic and too, this is how it is, my way or the highway. That is also a way to avoid uncomfortable feelings, right? By setting boundaries that are like crazy, crazy strict. Both of those things are methods of control, but I think we don't often see people pleasing in that way. And that can make it hard to identify in ourselves and figure out how to strike the balance, figure out how to not go from being a people pleaser to being overly rigid and dogmatic, right? Like, what is that middle ground? And you know, I love to sit in the gray. And just this episode was so great about all of the nuance between those concepts and kind of how we can really work through that in ourselves and work to sit in that middle, to sit in that gray. I loved talking with Paula. And on that note, if this whole concept of ambitious women dating interests you, I have a great media mention for you. There's a new podcast called Ambition 2.0. It's from Girlboss. It's super new, like 3 months old. I was introduced to it because friend of the pod, Amy Chan, who is a breakup expert, we had her on the pod years ago, and she's actually coming back soon to promote her new book. She was recently on their podcast. Because I follow her on social media, her episode came up, and I've started going back into their archives. I really, really love it. Specifically, though, Amy Chan's episode with them is excellent. It's called Dating is Harder for Ambitious Women. Here's Why. And it talks all about the different aspects of being an ambitious, career-minded woman who like succeeds in the workplace and gets shit done. Like one of the things that she talks about is kind of having this CEO mindset in your dating life. And I resonate really deeply with that as somebody who was like, well, I've been successful at things in my life. I just had to put my mind to it. I just had to CEO the situation, right? But you can't CEO your dating life unless you want to manage somebody else, unless you want your partner to be your employee, which is not the vibe that I'm going for personally, and I don't think most of us are. She talks all about that. And the other piece of the episode that I really loved is where she talks about emotional wealth and how emotional wealth is becoming ever more important, particularly for ambitious women who are not necessarily looking for someone to support them financially. But do you have emotional wealth? Do you have emotional intelligence? Can you be my equal emotionally? Has become so much more important. And that's a really cool part of that conversation too. So I'll link it in the show notes. I personally watched it on YouTube and really enjoyed watching it, but you can find it wherever you get your pods. Also, FYI, if you're on Apple Pods or Spotify, the audio is called The New Rules of Dating for Ambitious Women. What I said was the YouTube title. So you can find it, though, if you search for Ambition 2.0 and Amy Chan. For updates this week, I'm going to do something a little bit different. a few weeks ago on the Patreon, I talked about this really brutal DM that I got about my face, my appearance, and how it brought up a lot of feelings for me about moving away from wearing makeup every day and being more comfortable in my skin and my bare face, and how frustrating it is that women's bare faces are not considered professional or put together in the way that men's are. Like, men just get to show up with their face and women do not in society. And like, women choosing not to wear makeup is a story. Like, I remember when Alicia Keys stopped wearing makeup, it was a story, right? Like, this whole thing has been spiraling in my head for a little while now. But then a few weeks ago, I received this like really terrible, honestly, DM comparing my face to my bare face from the last couple of weeks or the last couple of months to a picture of me from a few years ago where I was wearing makeup and had my hair done. And I talked about it on the Patreon. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about it publicly, but I got so many private messages from that Patreon episode of women who have struggled with that same concept, women who have struggled with accepting their bare face as acceptable in society because of what society tells women, that I felt like it was an important conversation to bring to the main pod. And frankly, I said it as well as I could ever say it on the Patreon. Like, it was really raw. I think I'd gotten it the day before when I talked about it. So it's definitely like emotion filled. But I listened back to it again. I always listen back to episodes, but I listened back to it again today. And I don't think that I could articulate myself any better than I did. Like, I said everything I wanted to say, and I really just put it all out there on this topic. So I'm going to include that part of that Patreon for you. Patrons, you will have already heard this, but I really just felt it was important to bring into the public conversation because it's something that has continued to weigh on me ever since that happened. And one thing that I didn't mention in that episode that was in that DM was an element of like mental health that this person was imposing on me based on my bare face. Like, oh, she must be in a depressive episode because she's not wearing makeup. And that made me extra mad, frankly, and is another reason why I think it's important to talk about this in the light on the public pod. So with that, I will include that piece from that Patreon for your listening or viewing pleasure, wherever you choose to be doing this, because remember, we're on YouTube now. And then we'll get right into my interview with Paula. I want to talk about something heavier, which I wasn't honestly sure if I was going to talk about because, well, one, it literally just happened yesterday. And so it's still really raw. But, on the other hand, maybe that's the right time to talk about it. My stomach is kind of doing flips, even like starting these sentences. But also because I have talked before about how I have received some really, really horrible DMs in the past and things that have just really upset me. And I want to be so clear. I'm not talking about criticism of my content. Like, that's tough to read and hear as well, right? But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like deeply horrific things that I've mentioned in the past. They happen all the time. And I try not to focus on them or talk about them for the most part, because I think that, one, it causes me to dwell on them, and I don't want to dwell on them. I want to think about all of the positivity that comes my way, and it is vastly positivity, but it's so easy to hear those negative voices more loudly than the positive ones. And so there's that piece of it. Also, I don't want to give airtime, generally speaking, to people that are just being shitty to be shitty. And I'm not going to repeat most of what I'm talking about, except the specific thing that happened yesterday, but know that I'm talking about truly shitty things, not people criticizing what I'm doing with my content, not people criticizing, the direction the podcast has taken, whatever, not that, but nasty shit, right? So normally this happens literally every week at least once. And I generally don't talk about it for all those reasons. But the thing that happened yesterday really pissed me off, frankly, if I'm being totally honest. It upset me. It made me really sad. I cried about it, but it ultimately angered me because it is something that I really, really struggle with in being a woman in society. And so here's what happened. So I got a DM from a person who had created a side-by-side of a picture of me from 2 or 3 years ago. I think I remember the date that I went on that this was in. So I think it was 2022, but maybe 23. And a picture of me from recently and of my face side by side. And they were criticizing me and the side by side and the before and after, as they put it, and saying that I've let myself go. And even saying that out loud feels gross because it is just such a specific kind of cruelty. It's not feedback, right? It's just judgment. The reason that I really wanted to talk about it is because it was a long message that they sent. And in it, the core thesis behind their assertion that I have let myself go is the lack of makeup and doing my hair. So in the before, I'm putting that in quotes for those of you who aren't watching the video, in the before, I have straightened hair, which I'm not even getting into that part of it because it certainly did occur to me that the better, in quotes, version of myself is the one with straight hair, but I'm going to put that aside. I've straightened my hair, so I've done my hair. I'm wearing makeup. I was going on a date. I remember the outfit. I'm wearing this sundress. I remember this day, right? I was going on a date. I'm done up. And in the other one, it's probably from one of my Instagram stories or whatever. It was more recent. My hair is up in my bun. I'm not wearing makeup. What really got me is that this was not only a side-by-side comparison, evidence, as if women's faces should be I don't know, studied in this way, in this before and after way. But it also, the reason that I really wanted to talk about it is because it taps into something that I've been actively working on for years. And I want to bring to the light because I think that so many women are told that being put together means wearing makeup, means doing your hair, means, I don't know, painting your nails, means presenting a very specific, palatable to society version of yourself, not as coverage. And it is specifically levied at women. Men don't wear makeup. I feel that they absolutely should feel comfortable wearing it if they want to, but generally speaking, that's not societally acceptable. It is specifically levied at women that we are not putting effort in or looking put together if we're not wearing makeup or having done our hair. So for most of my life, I have believed that. I truly have. I that my natural face needed to be corrected in order to be acceptable, in order to be perceived well. And in order to be taken seriously. And I would put myself together with the goal of being perceived, often by women, honestly. I think about my career in the fashion industry. My very, very first job, I worked at a department store, a lot of very high fashion people working in this job. And I remember one of my very first performance reviews was that I needed to up my makeup game. I'm putting that in quotes. That was a direct quote. And wear heels more often, and which have always hurt my ankles because I've fucked up my ankles so much in volleyball, and straighten my hair because my curly hair was not professional. And I know that that's not what this particular DM was saying, though it isn't lost on me that I did have straight hair in the one picture. But again, that we're not going there. That's not the point of this. But I took that, I really internalized that feedback. And it was something that I had already internalized as a woman in society. I think we all have. But to be given that feedback in a performance review in a corporate setting, I took it to mean that the way that my appearance was perceived was intrinsically related to my value as a person and my value as a worker and my potential to contribute, my potential for success. And unfortunately, that is true societally, which fucking sucks. And there's it's tough because there's this tightrope that we need to walk, or that I feel like I need to walk, of wanting to push back on that and also wanting to participate in society and be successful in society. And it's like, am I, me, one person, Allie Jackson, going to change everybody's mind about what makes a woman look put together? No. But does that mean, so like, do I abandon it completely? Also, no. But like, where's the line? And I think for me, what this DM brought up is that, can I change society's perception of me? And particularly in the corporate world, just me? No, probably not. But do we need to be policing each other on a personal level, one-on-one? Absolutely not. We are making things worse. We are contributing to what society is doing to us. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because I think it's so, I just know deep in my heart, so heart of hearts, that this person who sent this to me has internalized that for themselves. It was a woman. And I didn't reply to her, but I don't know if she's a patron. If you are, I hope that you are hearing this with the amount of love that I am trying to say it. I think that we as women have internalized this for ourselves, and we either unconsciously or consciously, maybe I'm giving this person too much credit, but we unconsciously unload that on other women. And I don't want to just accept that. Like, I think there's some extent to which I have to accept that society is a certain way, right? And like, I can try to push back as much as I can and work on my own comfort with my bare face as much as I can. And yet there is still going to be this societal perception of what makes me look put together. Like that just is a fact. But man, do we have to be doing it in these one-on-one forums with each other? What are we doing? You know? And so over the last few years, I really have been trying to deconstruct where that comes from. I mean, I know where it comes from, but like deconstruct in myself how I feel about my bare face and the negativity that I feel about being barefaced and the reasons why I have felt in the past like I couldn't be, like I needed to be made up and done up. And don't get me wrong, I like doing makeup. I like doing my hair. Like, I think it's fun to experiment with makeup and with hair, but I don't like doing it all the time. And, you know, if I'm being really honest with myself, when I think back to that time that this person was showcasing as when I, you know, had it together, I was putting myself together to be perceived by men, sure, on dates, but also by women in the workplace, also by people just generally out in the world. And I still do that, but I think I do it less. And I feel a lot better about the way that I think about the way that I present myself, if that makes sense. I feel better about the way that I feel. I don't know if that tracks. But like, I feel better about my skin and my bare face now than I ever have. And I feel more like myself in my skin. I feel more comfortable. I feel more grounded. Obviously, there are aspects of my mental health that I continue to struggle with. That's true for everyone, I think. But that piece, I'm so happy with. And it made me so sad. One, because it made me so sad to receive that DM. One, for all of the reasons that I've said, right? But two, because like, it did still hurt me, which means that I'm not fully over that, right? I'm not fully at a place where I can say like, tune out that noise. I love my bare face. Clearly, there's still work to be done there. But, you know, when the entirety of society is telling you a thing, it takes a little bit to unpack it. And even when you logically know it's bullshit, it sneaks in. And that is why I decided to talk about this today, because I don't say this to be like, woe is me, I received this DM like that. Frankly, like that shit happens all the time. And I am a public, you know, talking about my life in a public way. And although I wish that this weren't the case, unfortunately, that shit often comes with the territory. But like, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. And I think if you are out there, if you're the person who sent me that, or if you are someone who has done something similar or said something similar about me or anybody else, like, just think about that for a second, you know? Like, think about what you are saying when you either tell a woman that she looks less put together without makeup or without her hair done. And I don't mean like if my hair was like all the fuck over the place, but like right now, I just have it like back in a clip. It's not blown out. It's not styled, right? Sure, maybe my top knot is messy. Like maybe I could do a better job about that. But like more specific in the makeup part, think about not only the impact on the person that you're potentially saying that about, but also the impact back to you. Because by telling a woman that she has let herself go because she doesn't wear makeup as much anymore, you're telling that to yourself too, that your bare face is not as good as your made up face, your covered face. And again, I love makeup. I think it is fun as hell. I like to use it as a dressing up tactic, not as a way to look presentable. And I think that for me is the difference. That is what I've been trying to unpack and separate for myself over the last few years. And I've talked before about how early in my content, before this picture was taken, and I actually think it was a screenshot from a video, but early in my content, in my stories, I used to use the Paris filter. And it's one of those filters that it feels unnoticeable. And if you see a story and somebody has the Paris filter on, you probably wouldn't even know. It's that subtle. But it does change the texture of your skin. And this was back in, I want to say like 2021. By the time this video was taken, I wasn't using it anymore, but also I wasn't using it in videos, only in stories. And you could just swipe right really easily and smooth your face. And it was subtle enough that you could still see texture, and it was not obvious that there was a filter on it. Plenty of people still use it. But what is happening to me is that stories were popping up from the past in archive or as I scrolled through my camera roll, whatever. And I was thinking to myself, wow, my face used to look better. Wow, I look tired today. No, you just aren't filtered today. And that when I realized that I was having that self-talk, I then realized the impact of what I was doing by putting out that filtered version of myself, even as light of a filter as Paris, right? I was doing that to other people when wearing makeup or not wearing makeup. Like if I was feeling that comparison of myself, gosh, what was I doing to other people? And so I stopped. I stopped using any filters. I literally never use a filter anymore. And I think that started my thought process about makeup as well, and about drilling into why I wanted to wear makeup. Like if I'm wearing it because I think it's fun and I want to dress up and I'm experimenting with things, awesome. If I'm wearing it because I think that the world won't perceive my bare face well, let me look at that. And 9 times out of 10, that's what was happening back then. And now I don't feel that way about the need to put makeup on. And my skin has never been better as a result. Honestly, I think the fact that I let it breathe more, I'm also more consistent with my skincare than I was then, has done wonders for my skin. And anyway, I think that like that was the part that I really wanted to name, because growth doesn't mean you're bulletproof. And that shit hurt. It threw off my day. And luckily I had volleyball last night, because endorphins make you happy and happy people don't, you know the phrase. But that honestly, it really helped. And it also helps. It always helps when something like this happens, for me to get into my real life with my real friends who like know me as a human and, have those real connections, and get a hug from Cindy, who gives the best hugs. And like have my like bare sweating face be loved like that. Luckily I had that last night. But I wanted to talk about it today for those reasons. And to say that, you can be confident and still be hurt, and you can be secure and still have moments where these old narratives try to reassert themselves, and you realize that there is still work to be done. And I realize that often, honestly, in things that I like think to say, like as we're getting ready to, go grab dinner, not like a fancy situation. We're just like going to go to the local spot and like grab a bite. And I'm thinking in my head to say out loud, is it okay if I don't wear makeup? What do you mean? What do you mean, is it okay if I don't wear makeup? Skyline is not asking if it's okay if he doesn't wear makeup. Men don't ask if it's okay if they don't cover their face. Also, men get beards, which don't even get me started on that. But I think there's just really something specific about how women are punished for opting out of performance. And I recognize that I work in a space, the one that I'm in currently, where it is a lot about visuals and it is a lot about perception and aesthetics and things like that. And if me not being made up every day or even very often means that there are people that are turned off by my content because of that, I mean, I hope that they look internally about that. But I can't internalize that. Like, I can't put that on me. And I don't want to teach myself, because I have in the past, that worth is something that I earn by maintaining a certain look, by maintaining a certain coverage of me and my face. Recently, I actually, on my stories, I posted a picture of my senior college photos that I found, like the graduation photos that I got taken at college when I graduated. I've said that multiple times. And I forgot until I found those photos in my like mementos box that they edited off the mole from my nose, my like very prominent mole, beauty mark, whatever you want to call it. They edited it off in my photos without my permission. Like the final proofs that they sent me just didn't have my mole on them. And I remember getting these proofs back and thinking, do they think I don't look good with my face? Like, do they think that my face needs changing? Like, that was one of the first external, like direct pieces of feedback that my face as is was not good enough. Luckily, I had done a lot of work on this mole specifically before then, so that I didn't actually internalize that it was about this mole, because when I was in middle school, I want to say, a dermatologist wanted to remove this mole because they were worried about, future like cancerous stuff or whatever. Not because it was currently suspicious, but just because they were, worried that it might go that way. And I remember I was with my mom in the appointment because I was a child. And I remember them saying, plus then she won't have that mole on her face. Like they said it like that. And my mom went immediately into mama bear mode. Like, what do you mean? That mole on her face is beautiful. It's what makes her face her face. Like, is it a problem right now? No? Then let's monitor it and we'll talk about removal if it becomes something you're actually worried about, not something that you're just driven by aesthetics on. And we never went to that dermatologist again. And we kept measurements of it, and it has not changed in my entire life, and it never became a problem. And thank God that my mom did that. And then I saw her stand up for me and my face in that way. And that went from what could have been an insecurity defining moment about the mole on my face into something that I'm extremely proud of and something that I think makes me me. And so I remember getting those photos back and my immediate reaction was, what the fuck? Like, that's not my face. And I never got proofs made of them, or like prints made of them. I paid for this whole thing. And I never did anything with the photos except, I guess, put them in this memento box. And that's why, because I hated them. And looking back, I probably could have asked for like the unedited versions, but I think I was just like embarrassed, honestly, that they had done that. I don't even remember if I told my parents about it at the time. I remember I paid for those photos. So I don't even know if they knew that I took them. Anyway, I hope that in sharing this, I am giving you permission, if you need it, that your bare face is just as worthy as your made up one. And if you love your made up face, that's amazing too, right? Like I said, I think makeup is super fun. I enjoy it. I like learning about it and experimenting with it, but I don't ever again want it to be a crutch that I lean on so that I feel more palatable to the world. And even on the days when comments like that get under my skin, I still choose my bare face. And I still choose to be me and to stand on what makes me me and not what I look like. And that's not always easy. And, I still am having a little bit of a heart palpitation, a little bit of agita, even just talking about this, because I have a feeling that it is not going to land well with not only just that person who sent me that, but also probably people who agree with that person, of whom I'm sure there are many. But even those people, I hope that something that I have said reaches you in even a small way. Not really about me, but just about our approach to each other. And society is hard enough on us, Like there is enough shit happening without us doing that to each other, without us tearing down each other's appearances and making each other feel like that is the important thing. So that's step down off my soapbox. I didn't intend to be on one. I just kind of wanted to share where my heart was at and what I was feeling. And I love you all, even the ones that don't love me. And we are back with Paula. Hi, Paula. Welcome to Finding Mr. Height, the podcast.
Hi, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So pumped to have you. This concept of people pleasing, I think, is something that comes up so much in dating, especially dating as a woman. And what I think is really tricky about it is that people pleasers are often, I think, really self-aware, like really kind people. Mm. And so it can be this really hard concept to talk about and to address. So I'm excited to chat about it today.
Yeah, me too. It's kind of my, I had a professor in grad school who used to say all research is me search. And that really resonated for me because I'm like, yeah, I guess it's not a coincidence that number one, I'm a psychologist. So I kind of spend my days deconstructing and analyzing things because I've always been just very hyper aware and hypersensitive to dynamics and a shift in energy and kind of, that type of thing. But also that I gravitate toward working with people pleasers because I am one myself. I say I'm recovering, but who knows what that, but
recovery is a journey.
Yeah. Right. It's a process. It's maybe a lifelong one, but, it's interesting. You say that you kind of make this connection with self-awareness. Cause that is something I noticed too, even to be able to say that you have these tendencies, you have to have some level of self-reflection there to notice that you do this and to not just sort of go through life on autopilot.
Yeah. And I also think that it can be more subtle that when you first hear people pleasing, I think the first thing that can come to mind is, oh, you're a doormat. You just do whatever everybody else wants. And if you don't think you're a doormat, you might not think that you are feeding into any people pleasing tendencies.
I think that's a good point too, that it doesn't always look like someone being passive or saying yes all of the time, or even being, I think sometimes you think of pleasing as happy or cheerful. That might not even be someone's persona, but they might still have some of these tendencies. So I like to really think of it more as wanting control over what you feel inside and being really uncomfortable with the feelings that you get when someone is mad at you or when there's conflict or when someone might be disappointed or when you have to say or do something that might make someone feel anything besides thinking you're the best person in the world,
Yeah. So talking about what people pleasing looks like in dating, you referred to yourself as a recovering people pleaser. How did that show up in your own dating life that you say that?
Basically I was on the impression management tour, I would say, when dating. So it was all about my big thing. And I think a lot of people, especially women, kind of internalize this idea that we're supposed to be chill, cool girl, low maintenance, easy breezy. Yeah, I'm down for whatever. I'm not those other girls who take a million years to get ready or whatever it might be. That's kind of these stereotypes.
Yeah.
That was me. I wanted to be the chill girl, easy breezy, nothing bothers me. I'm down for whatever, if you want to go here, sure. Yeah, why not? I'm down. That was kind of my MO. And I am not that person, like at my core.
Me
I'm
either.
not, yeah, not easy breezy. I do have opinions. I do have preferences. I do have certain, like I want things the way I want them or whatever. So I would really like just kind of fight against my nature. And as a result, I think I attracted and was gravitated toward people who wanted me to be that way. Like they wanted a partner who was easy breezy, chill, who never challenged them or who never made them feel uncomfortable. And ironically enough, I actually knew my now husband for a long time before we got together. Like he was a good friend.
Oh, wow.
And I sort of would like put him, I had him in the category of like, nah, like not someone for me. Partly I think because he is someone who can handle me having, feelings and needs and preferences and opinions, and not only handle it, but like wants that, he wants like someone to challenge him and kind of like a sparring partner,
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to kind of realize that I was putting myself in situations with people where I was never going to get to be real or like show my true self because I was so focused on, do they like me? Do they think I'm like the chillest girl they've ever been with? Do they think that I'm like hot, but like effortless? And, all of these things that are not real life. And, I think if someone I kind of have come, to realize that if someone wants that from you, like if someone genuinely wants a partner who never challenges them, never expresses an opinion, never shows too much emotion, they don't really want a partner, because being with another human being is being with their whole self and their whole set of emotions and thoughts and feelings and needs and like quirks and things that maybe like aren't their best qualities,
Yeah, they want like a prop, not a person.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's kind of dehumanizing if you like objectifying, really, if you think about it. It's like I want you to like sit there and like look hot and be quiet and just do everything I want. And I don't think there's I actually don't think there are a lot of people like that out there. I also think that we like kind of sometimes like assume that's what people want.
And that's actually what I was going to say and ask next is that I think I'm sure there are people out there who are looking for the doormat, looking for somebody who like truly actively looking for someone who doesn't challenge them.
Sure. Yeah.
Also, though, I think a lot of us are out there doing that because we think that's what somebody would want, especially I think women who date men, is that we're conditioned to think that. And I'm curious your perspective from your work, why do you think that is? Why do we think that's what they want?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people, myself included, somehow through various channels got the message growing up that certain emotions are okay to express and certain emotions aren't. And that if you show certain, like if your expression of emotions makes someone else uncomfortable, then like it's bad and it makes you unlovable or you're not going to be accepted or whatever. So I think we kind of like learn from it. If you want to kind of go like traditional gender roles, I think a lot of times women are taught that it's our job to make men comfortable. Yeah. And men are taught that it's their job to like be stoic and strong and not show emotion. So then if you kind of put those two things together, and this is obviously just a very like heteronormative way to look at it, but like,
sure,
if you kind of think about like, those are sort of like opposite, if I have to make you comfortable, but you have never had any practice experiencing emotion, then like, what are we ever going to do? Yeah. So we're screwed. So I think that might be a piece of it is like kind of just bad emotional education at the collective level from an early age. And maybe you're so used to just sort of like self-silencing or denying what you're really feeling that you kind of assume that like, well, if I don't think I can handle this, I don't think other people can handle this. So like, it just has to stay under wraps. But I do think that like human beings are more capable of tolerating feelings than we give ourselves credit for. We just like haven't always gone through the process of like testing it out, or like getting our reps in a way, like building the muscles that come with like expressing ourselves or handling when someone says something that upsets you or makes you feel a certain way or getting hurt, like you're going to get hurt, but we sort of shy away from like any situation that might involve me getting hurt or me doing something that might hurt you,
Yeah. And I think, at least for me, I think early on, I internalized people that I just didn't vibe with
Mhm.
as, oh, no one's going to vibe with that. Like, there are
Yeah.
people that like I'm just not compatible with, right? And like
Mhm.
who didn't like my personality, let's say.
Yeah.
But I'm internalizing that as, oh, my personality is too much. My needs
For
are too much
anyone, not just
for
for this.
anyone.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
becomes I kind of did that too now that you mention it. Like I think, and I do think this is a tendency that a lot of kind of like high achieving types experience where it's like
Mhm.
I want to be good at everything and I want everyone to like me all the time. And so it's like it's not enough to just have like some friends who like me. I have to have like every person in the world think that I'm great and like charming and wonderful and smart and whatever.
Yep.
And you can't be everyone's cup of tea. And
I
it
mean,
just, that's hard.
as somebody who is like that, talk about
Yeah.
exposure therapy, starting a public
Right.
podcast and social media
Yeah.
account.
Well, have you gotten that? Like, have you had to like I mean, I'm sure you get like commenters or like
Oh, yeah.
critiques and stuff. And
Yeah.
you've
You're
had
not
to
going to
like,
be like, to your point, you're not going to be
yeah,
everyone's cup of tea. And like, that
right.
has to be okay. But when you are a more public facing person, you're confronted with those opinions a lot more than you would be as
Mm.
just like a person on the street.
Well, so can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Why did you start the podcast?
Good. That's a very good question that like I do.
Yeah.
I think I started my social media before the podcast, and I
Okay.
started my social media and talking about my dating life
Yeah.
because I needed at the time motivation and accountability to want to keep doing it.
Okay.
And
So
I
you
was
you put yourself out there. It was worth it. Like it was like
yeah.
the value of being public facing and maybe getting sometimes like negative feedback or like judgment or whatever was sort of like a worthwhile trade-off for like what you were getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then over time, I started talking more about like advice. Like when I first started, I was really just talking about my own dating life.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into talking about things that have worked for me, things that haven't, things that I've learned along the way. And then I started the podcast as kind of a longer form version of that. And at the time I was doing it with a friend of mine. So we were like chatting about our dating lives, and it's just kind of like evolved along the way. But I certainly didn't set out really thinking about what being more public was going to mean in terms of how I internalize criticism and feedback.
I feel like that's the best way to approach something that's important to you, is to not be so focused on like, well, what could be like the uncomfortable feelings that I might feel when I do it, because it's like, if that stops you, then you're never going to do anything.
How do you kind of draw the line between somebody who considers themselves to be thoughtful and flexible in like a kind way and somebody who is journeying into that people-pleasing territory?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is like the underlying function, which does take a certain level of like self-awareness to identify, is, what's driving you to act this way? So am I being driven by fear of discomfort or wanting to control what the other person thinks of me? Or is it coming from a place of authenticity? Like I genuinely, maybe right now my mother-in-law is going through, like, her mom is not doing well, aging on the decline, and like it's been really painful to watch, and she's really, going through it. And like I find myself thinking of her a lot, reaching out to her a lot, checking in on her a lot, and it's coming from a place of like genuine, I care.
Yeah.
But there have been times in my life where someone might be in a similar situation, and I would sort of like almost like make it and like systematize it and be like, I better check on that person because I want to be seen as like, I want to be good. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good family member, So I think which is interesting because it does take a level of like insight to pinpoint that, because from the outside, it can look the same. Checking in on someone. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you taking care of yourself? I'm here for you. That same behavior of doing that could be driven by like authenticity, or it could be driven by like people pleasing. So it's tricky. It's like slippery, right?
Yeah, because
does that make sense? Like
it does. It does.
Okay.
And I think that is something that's so hard to kind of piece together, especially as you're trying to journey out of people pleasing, because you don't want to go to a place where you're so rigid and inflexible and like, this is the way it's going to be. Because then that's a different version of control. Now you're like controlling other people's experiences.
Right. Now it's sort of my way or the highway
Right.
rather than let's have a conversation or And because I do think that like some of it comes from, like I said, wanting to control discomfort, like not wanting to feel feelings that you don't like or that are kind of icky. Like the feeling I get when someone's mad at me or when I think someone's mad at me. Oh, it's like probably my least favorite feeling ever. And it's also part of being alive, right? Like you can't never feel that way. But I think as human beings, we kind of buy into this illusion that we can control what we feel inside. It's like, well, if I just say this or do this or don't say this or don't do this, then this is, it's like A plus B will always equal C. And that's not really how life works, but we think it's how life works. So then we sort of just like fall into these traps of trying to like control everything all the time. And like you said, it can kind of show up with people pleasing. It can show up with like trying to control the other person so that you always feel good or whatever. It can kind of manifest in a bunch of different ways. But
yeah, I think there's there's a need or a want to avoid regret or avoid rejection in a way that like you said, controlling the way that I feel and therefore controlling the outcome.
Yeah. And something that I see a lot with dating, and I think especially with like apps and online dating kind of stuff, is like trying to get ahead of it in every way because the profiles are so like there's already a lot you can like filter for. But it's, I mean, in my opinion, a lot of it's like surface level stuff that doesn't really tell you like who someone is, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, all right, you're already filtering maybe for like age, height, location, whatever, all of these things. And then I think sometimes what I notice is people get like more in the weeds. It's like, all right, well, so yeah, on paper, they check all of these boxes, but I need to get ahead of like, I need to tell them up front, like, I'm this way and I'm this way. And if you're this way, like, don't bother because it's not going to be a match. And, like, and I think that's another version of this sort of trying to like control, like prevent ourselves from having to feel maybe some type of way that we don't want to feel like in the future. But all it really does is like block intimacy, right? It like prevents you from really finding out organically, like, is there a connection here? And so I think I think that it's partly like pitfall of the modern world a little bit that like we have all this great technology and we have like AI and we have all of these like tools that can really help us and enhance our lives. But I think that sometimes we like almost see them as extensions of ourselves in a weird way, like a Black Mirror type thing where it's like we see ourselves maybe as like able to be programmed like we're machines or able to like program human experiences to make them like have the same outcome every time. If that makes sense. It makes sense in my head.
No, it absolutely does. Because I think something that I see when people are reviewing dating app profiles is exactly what you're talking about in terms of trying to see 5 to 6 steps down to say, well, they answered this prompt this way, which means they're going to be this way, which means that the date's going to go like this and we're not compatible.
Right. Like in conclusion. And it's like, well, you are seeing, not only are you seeing such a quick snapshot of a person, but like you're seeing, their labels. You're not really seeing like who they are. And so I think that's, that is, it's tricky. And it's understandable to like not want to feel uncomfortable feelings. Like we all want to feel good, So like I get it. I get why it's enticing. And, I've done the same thing where I'm like, let me just like get ahead of this. I already know how this is going to go. So I'm just going to like not even bother because it's not going to go the way I want it to go. And like, you don't know that. You don't know how things are going to unfold. And like, people surprise you all the time. Even people you like someone you think you vetted them and then you get to know them and they're not who you thought they were, because
1,000%.
You can't like tell someone who you are, right? You have to like show them.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to me when I hear people talk about that approach because it seems at the outset like the opposite of people pleasing. It seems at the outset like, no, I'm just prioritizing what I want. and making sure that
Let's
I
not
don't waste my
our time.
Yes, Jinx. Yes.
Yeah.
But I think both approaches are attempting to avoid uncomfortable feelings, like you said, and they're not giving somebody space to be a human.
Right. I think it is this sort of like, to go back to like technology and AI and all of that, I think it's like a desire to optimize everything.
Yeah.
Because even this idea that it's like, let's not waste our time or let's cut to the chase is like, what time are we wasting? Like, we're being alive? Like,
what is wasted time? Like,
yeah, how do you even quantify that, right? Or like, really, I mean, I think the only way I could really think of it being like wasting someone's time would be if, like, honestly, the people pleasing, I think, waste time more so than this other stuff. Because think about, like, if you know how you really feel and you're choosing to like hide it and not share it with the person, like, that is more of a waste than being, letting things unfold.
The only thing that I could see as fully wasting time is if one person is lying. And people pleasing is a form of deception, even if you're not doing it maliciously.
And I think even if you're doing it unconsciously, which is part of the, which is what makes it a little bit tricky, is that sometimes you don't even know you're doing it till later. Hopefully you kind of figure it out.
I remember having so many experiences. I've talked about this in the pod a lot about how I would have like mini almost relationships. Like I would date someone for 6 to 8 weeks kind of thing, like throughout my 20s, maybe even less time than that, 3 to 7 weeks. And I would have this moment where I would stop performing, where I would stop trying to be the cool girl, the chill girl, and then things would blow up.
How so?
And they would ghost me, or they would break up with me, or they would end things. And at the time, I perceived that as like, well, fuck them. They were wasting my time. And granted, no one should be ghosting, right? Like, treat people kindly.
Yeah.
Also, though, they weren't getting to know me. They were getting to know this like robot that I thought they wanted. And then turned out we were not compatible, but I was a fully equal participant in that because I didn't show them who I was.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think it's interesting because my takeaway when that would happen to me would be, I would kind of blame myself. I'd be like, see, I should have kept it under wraps. Like, I was too much for them. Like, my emotions were, I'm too much. I need to like chill out. I need to like contain myself better. I shouldn't like express needs, which obviously is not a healthy perspective either. But it's like you said, no, it means we're not compatible. Or it means maybe like, I do think that over time I learned how to express myself. It was less of a like pendulum swing, where from like hold it in, like explode, or like say passive aggressive. Yeah. Like say passive aggressive shit. And like, in a moment of like, I've like reached my breaking point and now I'm going to like explode, like that is like kind of intense and can, make the other, like that can kind of shut down like real connection too. So like, I think that also it comes from learning how to like express yourself in a assertive way and not a like passive aggressive, or kind of like not wait for things to build up to a point where then you're sort of just like testing the other person and like hoping they guess what you're really feeling and that kind of thing. So self-growth.
All about it.
All about it.
So when you work with clients that are struggling with this, that are struggling on like what that balance is of being authentic to themselves, but not, not swinging the pendulum in either direction, like what do you advise them to do as kind of their starting point?
I think it depends, but I like to kind of do that, like peeling back the layers a little bit of like, where did you learn to be this way? And like, what is this, what do you kind of like attach to this thing? Like that you need to be seen a certain way, or, like, what is this for you? Cause I think that like making that connection also can help you kind of like dismantle it a little bit more. So like for me, the people pleasing has always been about like what I believe to be my ticket to validation, love, belongingness, worth as a human, was like that I had to like make other people comfortable. And if I wasn't making other people comfortable or being helpful or being, you know, supportive or whatever, however it looked, like if I wasn't being that way, then like no one would want me around. I would have no value, you know?
Then that was like a failure.
Right, exactly. And so once I made that connection, it was like, okay, now I can like look for situations that disprove that, of which there are many over the course of my life. Like I have friendships and relationships with people who don't need me to be that way, but I was very fixated on the ones who did. And then also getting a sense of like your values. So the primary approach that I use in therapy, and that's also one of the like core kind of devices in my book, Toxic Striving, is called acceptance and commitment therapy. I don't know if you've had anyone on who's talked about this approach, but
no,
I am obsessed with it. I could talk about it all day long. But it's an approach that's designed to help you build psychological flexibility. So like the whole point of it is to learn how to basically like notice when you're engaging in behavior patterns and like thought patterns where you're trying to control what you feel inside or control things that you can't control, like other people or external situations that you can't control. And shift your energy towards the things you can control, which is like your own actions. Hone in on your personal values. So like, what type of person do I want to be? What's going to make me proud of myself? Like at the end of my life, looking back, how am I going to want to be remembered? You know, those qualities that I want to embody. And then channeling your energy into acting in alignment with your values rather than trying to get a certain reaction from the people around you or trying to like control things you can't control, being more present, not letting your thoughts and your feelings dictate what you do, but letting your values dictate what you do, because your thoughts and feelings are transient. They're going to come and go. Sometimes they don't really like make sense. Sometimes you don't have to like them. You sort of just like learn how to like let them be there and come and go and change in every moment without getting too like caught up in them, which is obviously easier said than done. But
I really like that concept of you don't have to like your thoughts and feelings.
I mean, I don't like a lot of my thoughts and feelings, right? Like,
but I'd never thought about it that way.
Yeah. And I think we want to, like, naturally, right? Humans are kind of natural problem solvers. Like, if we have something that we don't like, we want to fix it. So like, but the problem is feelings aren't problems to solve. Like, they don't need fixing. They just are, right?
They just exist.
They exist and then they don't exist. Like every feeling I've ever had has eventually gone away. And then it's come back and then it's gone away and then it's come back and then it's gone away. Like it's going to just do that till you die, you know? Like, so.
Yeah. And I think sitting with somebody else's feelings that are temporary, but it's hard to remember that. That's the hardest thing for me, I think, in conflict.
Yeah. You want to like fix it. So that they don't feel bad. Or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to trust that like their feelings are going to come and go too. And that like I have this problem sometimes with like my partner where he will like get upset and then he like needs to go be alone and process it. And I think I've heard your interview with about like conflict where she kind of was saying the same thing, where it's like if one person needs alone time and one person like wants to talk through it right now, it's sort of like that's really challenging. But it's like once he processes his feelings, then like we have a whole different conversation. And so, you know, you kind of have to like learn to tolerate like, but I want to deal with this right now. Like learn to sort of tolerate that urgency feeling without acting on it, and like respect that feelings take time to pass. Yours do, theirs do, right? Like all of our feelings just sometimes they just need to run their course, like, you know, the waves in the ocean, right? They always kind of like crash and then they go away and then, you know, and then like something else is there. So, and like no one ever has this problem with like the emotions that we like, you know, it's never like, when's this happiness? Well, people do that. When's this happiness going to go away? But then that's the opposite, right? Where you try to like cling to it. Yeah.
Then you're like, you're expecting the dread to come back or something like that. But it's such a good point that we don't tend to think about the fleeting nature of good things. Or we don't tend to think about the fleeting nature of bad things, rather, in the same way that we think about the fleeting nature of good things. In the same way that in dating or in any situation, I think it's so much more common to think, well, what if this horrible thing happens? And not what if this amazing thing happens?
Right. And to sort of think of it in categories where it's like, this is a success if we like get married and then we're married forever and we're really happy. And this is a failure if it's any other outcome,
if something else happened.
Right. If any, that's like the bar is very high. Like it's success is this one outcome and everything else is failure. And it's like, what about the situations where maybe you have a great thing, you have a great connection for a little while and then like it turns out it's not a long-term match, or you had a really fun time, but it's not a match, or you didn't have a fun time, but you like learned something about yourself, or you tried a new restaurant, or, like what about those outcomes? Like, can you kind of move away from categorizing, which is another thing an ACT is very big on, like not like words kind of create suffering, like language creates suffering basically for ourselves. Like obviously humans have this capacity for language that is like really meaningful and wonderful and allows us to do a lot of cool things that other animals don't get to do. But like, it also causes us to like we attach so much meaning to words that then it sort of like makes our experience smaller, because it's like, even that, like dating, here's what I want out of dating. So if I don't get that thing, then like nothing else matters. And it's like, let's detach meaning from the idea of like success, or let's like kind of like take the power away from that one outcome of like marriage or like long-term partnership, and like let that be just sort of like, that could happen, this could happen, like there's an infinite number of things that could happen. Let me just sort of get curious and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, something that you've talked about is kind of shifting from focusing on that outcome to focusing on values. Like you said, what advice do you have in terms of making that shift within yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think awareness is a good first step, like noticing I'm getting really attached to this outcome, or I'm feeling like a strong sense of urgency that like I have to do this or say this, or things have to go a certain way. Like, because you're going to have desire, right? Like you're going to have like a preference. I would prefer for this date or this relationship to go in this direction, or like, this is my hope and my dream and, all of that. But like, can you hold that lightly, if that makes sense? And sort of be a little bit like, there's some space between me and this outcome, right? Where it's like, that could be the direction it goes. That's where I'd like it to go. But like, there's also a lot I don't even know that like I might discover. Yeah. So a personal example that just popped into my head with all of this is like, I went through like a infertility journey, you could say, when trying to have a baby, and went through like a long process trying to conceive, then went down the IVF route, then, cycles didn't work out, this and that. And then when I did get pregnant, I had a lot of pregnancy complications, ended up like living in the hospital for like a month before my daughter was born, like trying to kind of keep her inside. Then she was premature. Then she was in the NICU, and like all of these like things that like at every step of the way, I was so like, I had such a process around like, this isn't how it's supposed to go. This isn't how I wanted it to be. Like, I want to have a baby and I want to just like do it the way everyone else does it, which, I mean, obviously what I went through is common. Other people have struggles too. But like, I was so at every point kind of fixated on like, I want. And like, it's easier to see in hindsight that like, I got what I wanted. I have a beautiful daughter. She is amazing. Like, I'm obsessed with her. And I didn't get it the way that I wanted to get it, but I got it. And like, also, I don't know. I mean, I guess that only like, that doesn't always happen for people. So I can acknowledge that too, that like you might want a relationship, want to get married, and like maybe you don't. And so there's no guarantee of these things, but like the way I need it to happen is not really the way I need it to happen. It's just the way I think I need it to happen,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things I think that happen that way in life that in hindsight, like you said, in hindsight, you're like, oh, well, that actually worked out okay. Even if the process of it wasn't what I wanted it to be. But to your point, I think accepting that it might not is a big part of it too.
That like, this isn't over yet. I don't know what the next chapter of my life story has in it. But like I might have an idea of where I want the story to go. And I might be trying to control for it, but like, I really don't. And that's true for everyone at everything all the time, right? So it's like, I think if you're kind of get stuck in like, but I want it, or like, you know, my life will be terrible if I don't have it. I think that is kind of also like a recipe for discontent, right? So it's also like, obviously I would prefer things to work out this type of way, or I would prefer to not have pain and hardship, but like, you're going to have pain and hardship. You just don't know what type yet if you haven't had, you know, more life ahead of you. Like, it's like, we're all going to go through it. And, you know, I had a therapist friend once who like said that I have held on to, like, this is just my shit right now, right? Like, everyone has shit. This is just the one that I happen to have right now.
At this moment.
This is what I'm carrying at this moment. It doesn't mean no one else has struggles, and it doesn't mean that this is going to be my struggle forever. It's just the one I've got right now, you know? So I don't know. I find that really helpful and like
absolutely,
you know?
Yeah. I got a question recently in I do like weekly Ask Me Anythings on Instagram. And I got a question recently about how I held out hope that I would eventually meet a partner. And because I met my now partner when I was 37. And my answer was, I didn't really.
Yeah.
Like,
like, maybe you don't have to have hope.
Yeah. The thing that kept me going was actually that I knew I was going to be okay with either outcome, even if I had a strong preference for finding a partner.
Yeah. I think that's such a good way of putting it. You can have preferences, you can have dreams, goals, hopes, like, of course, but it's like holding them lightly, right? And knowing that if I don't get it, I will survive and I will find other ways to have a meaningful life, because life is nuanced and complex, and it can be, there's no limit to like what you can find meaningful in your life, you know?
Yeah. And you don't know what that's going to look like. Like if somebody had told me at, I don't know, 24, 25, like, you're not going to meet your long-term partner until you're 37, like over 10 years from now, I would have been devastated. Like I would have been like, what are my 30s going to look like? That's going to be horrible. Everyone I know is getting into long-term relationships, and they're going to be married, and they're going to have kids, and that, you know,
only the pain. You like spiral on the pain. And that doesn't mean that wasn't there. Like, I'm sure it was hard to watch friends couple up, and, you know, like that's painful too. So it's also okay to like feel feelings about that.
For sure. And also, my 30s, I mean, they're not done yet, but like my 30s were the best. Like my early 30s, when I think about when I had the most fun in my life, was my early 30s.
That's so cool. And like, it's like you
fantastic.
said, if you had been so focused, if you were only focused on the things you didn't have, you would have missed the chance to even like fully experience the things that are positive or meaningful or, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
The other thing I was thinking of when you were asking about, this is kind of a circle back thing, but asking about like, where can people start if they have these people pleasing tendencies and they want to express? There's a book that like changed my life a long time ago called The Assertiveness Workbook. And you don't have to use this like workbook, but basically like learn assertive communication, because like I actually had a supervisor once, because I was very people pleasy in grad school. Like which is hard. It's hard to also be like, you're not going to be a good therapist if you're a people pleaser too, because you have to like,
that's true.
Direct sometimes, like tell clients what they don't want to hear, or at least ask hard questions, or sit with uncomfortable feelings. Like if you only want to feel good all the time, or you're uncomfortable with other people's discomfort, like it's very hard to help anyone really in a deep way. But I was very like, I just wanted to always be like seen as smart and this and that. And like, he was like, I think you should read this book. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to be direct with people. Like, there's a way to, I mean, it's kind of like if you're drilling it down, it's like I statements, I feel this way, keeping it focused on like specifics and behaviors and not making it like vague and all of that. But like, I think that is a huge like pathway to more connection and intimacy, is like learning how to communicate in a way that's assertive and clear. And I think, you know, if we were to tie back to what you just said too, I think that's also a process that comes with like growing up and like figuring out who you are, sometimes outside of like a partnership. You can do it within a partnership too, but you know.
Yeah, and I think that I'm going to check out that book now because I'm so curious, because there's also such a balance between, like we said, there's the people pleasing side of the spectrum, but then you can also swing the pendulum and overcorrect into rigidity and brutal honesty without any kindness or like nuance surrounding it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just keep it real. And it's like, no, you're kind of mean.
No, you're just an asshole, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell it like it is. Yeah. I've seen that before too. And it's like, but you don't have to always say every thought that pops into your head, or
1,000%.
You can empathize with like, how might this other person receive this? And, you know,
and that's why I think this work is so hard, because it feels safer to overcorrect. And to just say, well, I've spent my life catering to other people and now I'm only going to cater to me. And I, like you said, I just tell it like it is and that's the way it is. And I'm going to be brutally honest. And it's like, no, but that's not great either. We're still controlling.
Right. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. It's like, I think that, I wonder if that comes from being so fed up that you're just like, I'm done with this. I'm going to go to like the opposite, as opposed to, I think that's where it's helpful to like notice your feelings as they come up instead of like when you reach a boiling point. And that's what, like, to plug my book for a second, Toxic Striving is all about too, is sort of like helping you get in touch with your intuition and learn how to like pick up on your inner signals, because that's what's going to tell you what you really feel, what you really want, what's important to you. When something like isn't really working for you, or you're in a situation where you're not being authentic, or you're not being treated with respect, or, you know, whatever it might be, like being able to like pick up on those inner signals almost when they're like whispering at you, rather than waiting for them to be like screaming at you and you're like so fed up and so done that now you're just like, you know, the pendulum is going to swing the other way, to be able to be like, you know, all right, this isn't for me, or, you know, a little earlier.
Yeah. Do you have like a little intro of what that might look like for someone to start trying to listen to those signals and establish that self-trust?
Yeah. So this may feel unrelated, but I promise it relates. Like, so my two like clinical specialties are anxiety and eating disorders, and they don't seem like they go together, but actually like they're kind of two sides of the same coin, where like a lot of times I see people like, I'm fixated on, you know, I want to be like good at my job. I want to be a good partner. I want to have like eat a certain way. I want to look a certain way. I need to work out a certain way, right? Like it all kind of like can come together in that way. And so I use an approach called intuitive eating a lot, that I think is kind of like getting its moment in the sun right now. Like, I think it's kind of buzzy right now. But it's all about like taking your relationship with food and making it an inside job, rather than looking to like external rules or things, you know, ideas of like how you're supposed to eat, letting your body be your guide. And it's not eat whatever you want, whenever you want. It's a lot more nuanced than that. But you are letting inner signals kind of like guide you towards like, I'm feeling hungry. What feels satisfying? You know, what textures and flavors am I craving right now? And not being so focused on like, well, I can't have this because I had, you know, I can't have some like more carbs. I had carbs earlier, you know, like that's an external, that's not coming from your body. Right. So it's about like building trust to like really listen to your inner signals. And what I think is so cool that I see over and over again is that like, it's almost like the gateway or like an entry point into having intuition around other things too. So listening to your body regarding when you're hungry, when you're full, when you're satisfied, when you have energy, when you need to rest. also helps you listen to your body when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling hurt, when you're feeling invalidated, like noticing those inner sensations that tell you like, I need something that I'm not getting, or I have a gut instinct to like, this, I have a gut feeling that's telling me like,
Yeah.
this person is someone I want to keep getting to know, or I have a gut feeling that's telling me like, there's something about the way I feel when I'm interacting with this person that like doesn't feel safe to me emotionally,
Yeah.
So,
It's so interesting, that connection, first of
mhm.
all, of that, and intuitive eating is something that I really love. So I'm happy to hear you bring it up. But I
Oh, that's
think
cool.
something that I've realized in hindsight is in some
Mhm.
of my least safe relationships, let's say, emotionally, to
Mhm.
be clear, but like the ones that
Mhm.
I look back on and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I was ever in that relationship. I can think about times when my body felt so stressed around
Mhm.
the person and I couldn't figure out why.
That's
And
interesting.
I remember this one example in particular with this one ex-boyfriend of mine where we were fully in a relationship, like calling him my boyfriend, all of this stuff. And I remember I was sitting on his bed. He was in the bathroom. He wasn't in the room. And I felt so anxious, like my
Mm.
chest, everything, like my body felt like we got to get out of here. Like we have to leave.
Mm.
And I remember talking to myself and like pushing that down and saying like, no, like this is your boyfriend. You love him. Like this, everything, like this is crazy. You don't feel unsafe. This is fine.
That's wild because it's like that's what a lot of times we're kind of taught to do our whole lives is like ignore your intuition. It happens with food. It's like, oh, don't eat too much, don't do this, don't follow that, right? Like so you learn to kind of silence those
Hmm.
signals, but it happens with like others like emotional safety too. It's like you're overreacting, you're making stuff up, like don't be so sensitive, or this is what you said you wanted. You wanted a relationship and now here you are.
Literally
Yeah.
that. I remember because this is somebody that I dated after I had started talking about my dating life online. And I didn't
Okay.
have the podcast yet. It was a very different look than it is now. But I remember thinking, this is the whole point. Like
Mhm.
this is the outcome, to talk about being focused on outcome.
Uh-huh. And like it's almost like your resume. It's like, well, this is what I said I wanted and now I have the line on the resume.
Yep.
So why am I not feeling like I, why do I feel anything besides just like elated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I like pushed that down
Mm.
in service of that outcome driven thought, rather than, like you said, my own values of how I wanted to feel in a relationship.
Mhm. I feel like um we kind of like devalue that as like something being important. Like
Yeah.
devalue our own satisfaction in favor of like how things look on the outside or what do people think, or I think
Yeah.
that's common in dating. It's common with like work stuff, right, where it's like, well, you know this job title or working for this company is impressive to people, so it doesn't
Yep.
really matter if I like it or not, because it's like, think of how it looks to the outside. It doesn't really matter if I feel like emotionally safe with this person because my friends think he's a great catch, or I'm this age and I said I wanted to be married by this age so I could have my dream. But it's like, if you have your dream on paper, are you really like like
Yeah.
you deserve to enjoy your life too. And I feel like that is, at least for myself and a lot of the people I've worked with over the years, that is hard to believe, that like you deserve to enjoy your life and that like that is just as important as anything else.
Yeah. And I also think realizing that you can still enjoy your life while experiencing the discomfort of not
Mm.
feeding into everything that everybody else wants. Because I think I told myself for a long time that enjoying my life meant not feeling discomfort
Enjoying your life meant like feeling good all the time and
all the
like,
time. Yeah.
yeah. I don't think, yeah, I think that's an illusion that is sort of like we all kind of buy into probably at some point. I feel like anytime someone has come to therapy, they're like one of the first things they say is like, how do I like fix this? How do I not feel anxious? How do I, how do I not feel depressed? How do I just like give me the solution and
make it stop?
Yeah. And it's like, you can't really do that because that's part of being alive, is like having all of the feelings, but we can help you change your relationship to the feelings,
Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, on helping people change their relationship to the feelings, let the listeners know, where can they find you and your book and more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So my book is called Toxic Striving. And you can get it Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop. I am also on social media, Mindful Dr. Paula on Instagram and TikTok. As I alluded to earlier, I'm not super active, but you can find me on there. And I am online. Humankind Psych is my practice in Chicago, and PaulaFreedman-Diamond.com if you want me on your podcast or to speak at your event. I'm always happy to talk about any of the topics we talked about today. I just like, it's my absolute passion. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. And to the listeners, we will talk next week.